Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 4th, 2019 meeting of the Arcata City Council. If you care to, please join us in the flag salute. May we please have a roll call?
Mayor Watson?
Here.
Vice Mayor Winkler?
Here.
Councilmember Patino?
Here.
Councilmember Pereira?
Here.
Councilmember Ornelas is absent.
Thank you. Ceremonial matters. That's okay. Let's wait one moment. All right. And we have a proclamation in recognition of Human Rights Awareness Month, December 2019, to be read by Councilmember Pereira.
Whereas the United Nations Assembly adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in December 1948, marking the first attempt in human history to set the minimum rights every person should enjoy. And whereas in 2019, there is a growing public awareness of the lack of civility among groups of people and individuals in their ability to discuss topics of the day without anger or fear. And whereas hate speech, intolerant language, bias, and discrimination has led to actions which are violent, emotionally intimidating, and in some cases lead to physical harm. Such a transformation within our culture will further erode the peace and tranquility that our residents expect and deserve, leading to a more violent community ending in harm to our residents, young and old. And whereas in December 2019, individuals, groups of people, agencies, departments, elected officials, and public servants choose a different path that acknowledges peace, harmony, and human rights for all. Human rights and freedom from fear must exist for all people, or they exist for no one. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata hereby recognizes December 2019 as Human Rights Awareness Month and encourages all residents to educate themselves about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the privileges we enjoy in a free society. Human Rights Awareness Month will be the beginning of a continuing effort throughout the coming year, coined the Humboldt Kindness Campaign. During this time, we advocate for special civic engagement to occur, personal reflection to take place, efforts to educate the public, and community effort to use kindness instead of hate, regardless of personal perceptions and political views. Signed today by Mayor Watson. I'd like to invite up Stephen Lorius.
Next, we have a certificate of recognition presented to Jean Joyce, owner of Arcata Exchange. For your dedication as a small business leader in Arcata for over 20 years. Arcata Exchange, under Jean's ownership, has maintained affordable, high-quality furniture that welcomes new students and brings a sense of home to longtime residents. In addition to being the model of personalized, friendly service, Jean is known for the hours he spent donating blood and volunteering to support the business community. Jean has served on the boards of both the Chamber of Commerce and Main Street over the years, assisted in setting Arcata's vision through the Economic Development Strategic Plan, and mentored many new business owners throughout the years. The city recognizes and thanks Jean for his commitment to the plaza, the vibrant and seasonal window displays of Arcata Exchange, and always keeping the corner of 8th and 8th Street on the plaza sparkling clean. Signed today, December 4th, 2019, by myself, Mayor Brett Watson, and would you please come up, Jean? And next we have a certificate of recognition presented to Vicki Joyce, owner of Bubbles. For your commitment to providing high-quality local products to the Arcata community for over 46 years. As an anchor store in Arcata's downtown, local residents and visitors alike felt Vicki's personal touch, shopping for locally made soaps, shampoos, bubble bath, bath crystals, and so much more. In addition to Vicki's contributions to the Arcata economy, the city recognizes Vicki for her far-reaching community service, mentoring and supporting other small businesses through years as the president and board member of Arcata Main Street. The Arcata community has witnessed her putting in tirelessly long hours, planning, decorating, managing, and cleaning up after dozens of special plaza events each year, and working behind the scenes to support countless new small businesses since 1973. Signed today, December 4, 2019, by myself, Mayor Brett Watson, and please come up, and you're welcome to make some comments.
And by the way, we have always called each other cousins because all the Joyces are supposed to be related. So
we are related somewhere back in Ireland.
Somewhere yes.
way back when. And stay here with me.
Okay.
When I looked at the agenda, it felt like it was Joyce recognition night tonight. So. And I want to say thank you, and thank you, the mayor, council members, city staff, and everything. Thank you, City of Arcata, residents of Arcata, Humboldt County. What an incredible, wonderful place to live, raise a family, own a business. When I graduated from high school and went to college, my dream was to be a business owner. I got to realize that dream and fulfill it. I never realized that being a business owner would teach me so much about community, giving back to the community, and what community is all about. So I thank everyone for making me the person that I am today by supporting Arcata Exchange, local business and everything. Want to put a pitch out there. Santa Claus is showing up Friday night. The Arcata downtown Main Street open house happens Friday night. Support local business any chance you can. They're the ones who are coaching your kids in school, being your kids' scout leaders and whatnot. So with that, continue to support local business. Do a good turn daily. Be friendly, share a smile, be a good neighbor, pick up a piece of trash when you see it out there, and help keep Arcata beautiful, and do what you can to make the world just a little bit better tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, now you say. Okay. Well, mine. Well said, by the way. And so mine is more a love letter to Arcata. And it's just, I mean, thank you. This is an honor. I'm flabbergasted because feel like I'm more just the kind of person that's behind the scenes and not out front. But so thank you so very much. And so I just wanted to say, just to remind you guys what it was like in 1973 when Bubbles opened. And Arcata was just a sleepy college town. And there were a lot of vacant storefronts. And except for the bars, the town really rolled up its carpets at about 5:30. It was just a sleepy, sleepy town. G Street was a two-way street. H Street was a one-way street. Two-way street. Yeah, they were both two-way streets, and 101 was G Street going through town. Oh. And it's just sometimes it's hard to remember that. And then because there were blue laws in effect, businesses couldn't be open on Sundays. So that is also a change. We didn't have credit cards. We took cash and checks only. And when credit cards came along, you had to call on the phone and authorize any transaction over $25. So that was what it was like when Bubbles opened. And I also wanted to say, because I had a business in the industrial park was a twinkle in someone's eye. It did not exist. And it's just, I want to say, look what you've done. Look how the town has changed. And look how great Arcata is. I mean, Arcata is now the place that people want to be in business. Just on my block alone, a barbershop and a new CBD store have opened in the past 6 weeks. So there are no vacancies on my block. I mean, and Arcata Exchange has already been rented. So Arcata is the place where people want to be, and it's you folks and the people that live in Arcata who are so incredibly loyal and supportive that make this a place that people want to be in business. And all I can say is just thank you, because the people in Arcata have supported me for so long. It's just nice to be able to give back by volunteering with Arcata Main Street. So now, just to tell you, after this, my husband and I are going to go out to dinner in Arcata and celebrate. Thank you.
Next, we have early oral communications. This 15-minute time period is provided for people to address the council on matters not on the agenda. At the conclusion of all oral communications, the council may respond to statements. Any request that requires council action will be set by the council for a future agenda or referred to staff. Speakers addressing the council at this time may be limited to 2 minutes. All other oral and written communications will be heard at this meeting under agenda item 11. Do we have any members of the public that would like to comment at this time? Come on up. On items not on the agenda.
Setting a high bar.
Yeah.
I got inspired from someone else here that cartwheels would be a great way to enter. So I am known as Trish the Dish. That's what they call me. And I'm here on behalf of the Humboldt Juggling Festival, which is an annual festival. I'm just going to show these great posters from last year that is going to be in its 20th year this year, which is a miraculous, because working with jugglers is kind of like herding cats. So this is really, really amazing. And this year we have it planned for March 13th through the 15th at the Arcata Community Center. And so I am here to request a wish that we have, that there could be some sort of discount or fee reduction or something to help us put this free festival on to the public, where we bring all these world-class performers from all over. We basically foster the love of circus arts in our community, and we have workshops and competitions and games, and we have this, of course, giant public show. And I like to, oh, Vicky's gone, but I like to I always thank her, but she, Oh, there she is. I'd like to thank her for generously donating bars of soap to our Don't Drop the Soap game every year. So, anywho, I brought this letter to you last time I was here, but I didn't realize what a popular event the city council meetings would be, so I didn't get to speak. And I know you've all gotten my letter in your emails, but if one of you could tell me later or now or whenever how we can proceed to make some sort of discount possible for us, because the Arcata Community Center is just a little more expensive for us than Humboldt State, but we prefer to work with the city because, well, frankly, you're real humans. And we really appreciate that. We've really enjoyed working with the city before when we've done our shows at D Street Neighborhood Center, and the Arcata Community Center is also awesome. So I'm gonna, even though I left this last week, I will leave it again, this letter and these awesomely inspiring photos of, well, they're, you know, not really photos, they're posters. And my number's here, so there it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
This is going to be really brief. I was going to write something down. I started, and I'm not going to do that this evening. Really, what I wanted to say was to put out a thank you for the people here in Arcata who have helped me with the difficulties I've been going through. And I know the mayor and Paul Patino have been working on something for me and concerned with the pesticide use in this city. And so I plan to come back again with more information and work on this project, but I am putting out a thank you for everyone who has helped in this city.
Thank you.
My name's, is this on?
Yep.
Okay. My name's Joanne McGarry, and I come to you in recognition that we are all here on ancestral land of the Wiyot people. And I come to you again in hopes that we can emulate what's happening currently in New Zealand, down under, where I just read before coming to this meeting how the entire nation has decided in an emergency declaration for climate change that everything that happens in New Zealand in the government decision-making will have consideration of environmental impact in any actions that they take place from here forward. And as you know, New Zealand has also declared that they would be carbon neutral, zero carbon by 2030, I believe, if not 2025. So again, I just ask the city here to recognize the climate emergency that is all over the world, and in our little world, and the beauty of our little world can only get more beautiful if we really do urgently take drastic measures to not emit greenhouse gases into the atmosphere as much as possible, and starting with anything that the government and the city of Arcata can do to reduce greenhouse gases. I went to the library and saw the written greenhouse gas reduction plan. It was kind of hard to understand a little bit, and I would really love to get some comments on a regular basis about what the city is doing in its climate emergency declaration to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in our community, to aid in thwarting the existential threat to all of life on the planet of what's existing with climate change. Every Friday, I try to make it up to the Arcata High School and encourage the students and their parents who are driving their individual cars to the school, dropping the students off, to carpool to school, use less fossil fuel is the sign I have carried there for weeks now. And I also carry this sign, and I recycle my signs or reuse them. And so today you get a bright pink sign. It's just a reminder of the message I hope that you will carry with you in this emergency situation. So that was to get your attention. So what we can do differently, we have to not do business as usual. We have to be different about how we live. And thank you for listening, and anything you can do to help me understand what we're doing is appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other members of the public that would like to comment on items that are not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to the consent calendar. Right? Oh, sorry. I thought you were looking at me. Consent calendar. All matters on the consent. Oh,
I just wanted to report out that we did receive an email request from the Juggling Festival as well, from Trish. And so I've met with staff from Environmental Services on Monday, and Mike Rice should be reaching out to you to talk through some options and then report back to me in terms of what those costs are. We have 2 requests before us. It is a very rare scenario that the city does look at fee waivers. But one of the things I have asked staff to look at is these multi-day events, because the 2 that we have before us right now are both multi-day events, and to see if we've got something that's becoming prohibitive within our fee structure around that concept. So I just wanted to let the council know that. And Mike Rice will be reaching out to you to sort of talk through what the pricing options are.
all right. We will now move on to the consent calendar. All matters in the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the City Council and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of any of these items. If discussion is required, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. At the end of the reading of the consent calendar, council members or members of the public can request that an item be removed for separate discussion. Approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of November 13th, 2019. That was item A. B, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of November 20th, 2019. C, biweekly report on general warrants. D, adopt resolution number 190-35, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata amending the class and pay resolution for International Union of Operating Engineers, Local Number 3, to reflect the remaining negotiated salary increases for the MOU term of 7/119 through 6/30/21. E, adopt resolution number 190-34, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata, amending the class and pay resolution for Arcata Police Association to reflect the remaining negotiated salary increases for the MOU term of 7/119 through 6/30/21. F, adopt resolution number 190-36, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata adopting the class and pay resolution for management, mid-management, confidential, and appointed employees to reflect the remaining scheduled salary increases. G, authorize 1, amendment to Conservation Easement Recreational Access Plan Map, North Coast Timberlands, LLC. 2, approve the trail improvement project. And 3, approve the project notice of categorical exemption under the California Environmental Quality Act. CEQA. Items removed. Do we have any members of the public that would like to remove an item from the consent calendar? Any members? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
staff would like to remove D, E, and F. We've had some information that has come to us on those items, and we would like to be able to analyze that and bring that back on December 18th.
Great. Any other items to be removed by council?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar without items D and F. Oh, sorry, D, E, F, excuse me. Thank you.
Do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on these items? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And so that's it, right? So old business A, review the draft housing element and provide direction to staff. The city is required to, all right, staff report. You know, I'm feeling a little bit feverish, so I apologize. I think I got a fever coming on, so my apologies.
So tonight before you is the draft housing element for the sixth cycle. It's the period encompassing 2019 to 2027. And we're here on a formally noticed public hearing. You recall that we brought this before you at your last hearing, just so you'd have plenty of time with the document before being asked on December 18th to consider adopting this housing element. So this is the first publicly noticed hearing on the draft element for the City Council, and we're going to ask that you continue to your next meeting. Just wanted to make that point. HCD was still reviewing the draft element at your last meeting, and they've given us a number of comments, which we've addressed. In the version that you have before you tonight, you'll see several track changes, comments, strikeout, and underline that identify the changes that were made. We've gone through a couple of rounds with HCD staff, and I feel confident at this point that they're at a point where we'll be able to have a certified housing element should the council choose to adopt it by the 29th. We do have a couple of other changes that have come in recently that we'll hand out tonight. Again, just minor tweaks that are sort of the last little updates provided by HCD in response to some public comment. And we believe we are primed for certification with that. I did want to go just, because last time we had a long meeting and I kind of gave short shrift to the staff report, I wanted to kind of go big picture, and I know we've talked about several elements and pieces of the housing element over the past several months, but just to kind of consolidate it back in one place before you're making decisions on this document, I wanted to go over the high-level view. So the big picture is this. This is the sixth cycle. Again, it's the period covering 2019 to 2027. We're finalizing the fifth period, which was 2014 to 2019. Now, the policies are largely the same. There are a few notable changes that I'll point to as we go through the document, but the policies are largely the same between the 2014 and the 2019 document. This also relates to the environmental review that I'll talk about in a little bit, but I wanted to draw your attention to the fact that, while this is an important policy document, most of it is not really that new. The housing element is required in order to be certified to demonstrate the policy and programs that implement the regional housing needs allocation, that we can provide enough vacant land to show that we can meet those regional housing needs allocation. If you look at Table 1 on page 67, that identifies both Arcata's allocation as well as the county's. The council did weigh in on this earlier this year with the regional housing needs allocation process, the recommendation to Humboldt County Association of Governments to use a 50-50 jobs housing balance and the methodology for distributing the 3,390 total that you see there in the far right-hand lower corner. That resulted in Arcata's allocation of 610 units to provide for over this next 8-year period. The RENA process also allocates the housing units into different income levels. The point of the housing element is to ensure that the city is providing available land to provide for all income levels housing needs. If you look down at Table 2, we've done an evaluation of where we are at with respect to that inventory that includes building permits that were applied for in 2019. And if there are any others that we'll add to this before we certify it, we'll update this table in the housing element. It also looks at reductions based on projected ADUs or accessory dwelling units and anticipated annexation of the Creekside project. So this table tells you what our remaining balance is. What are the number of units that we don't have land to support right now? And as you'll see in this table, we have 88 units of very low and low income housing to provide for that's not allocated yet, but we do fine with the moderate and above moderate meeting all of the need for those two income categories. The important thing to note here as well is that, we've included the annexation project, but that's still going through a discretionary review. The total density that it gets approved at, if it gets approved, all of those questions are still remaining. And so anything that's included in the housing element as identified as accommodating, especially low and very low income housing units, if it doesn't come to fruition, the state's going to require us to have a program that will identify replacement units to accommodate that balance that we included in our reductions. So you'll note here, we have between very low and low income on the projected annexation, we have 25 units counted for there. If for some reason that annexation doesn't go through or the project doesn't include 25 units of low and very low income housing, the city's going to have to go find a 25 unit, account for that 25 unit deficit somewhere else in the city. The housing allocations that, that were accommodated through the regional housing needs process is kind of one part of it. The other part of the housing element is really to evaluate governmental and non-governmental constraints to housing development, special needs populations, and a variety of other elements that go into whether or not housing can actually be built in the jurisdiction. We've talked about this in a little bit of detail, and I'll just kind of skim over it at this point, but there have been a lot of changes in housing element law that put the onus on the jurisdictions to really actually provide for the housing that they're accounting for in their plans. If the housing isn't built out, then we start to lose some of our local control, and developers start taking some of that local control to be able to build by right. And so we're doing a really detailed review in this housing element to make sure that we're only including lands in our inventory that can actually be built on, and we're using conservative estimates for the total number of units to make sure that we're actually accommodating for properties that can develop those units, so we don't get caught in this state-mandated, principally permitted development that loses that local control. To that end, we're also embarking on the infill plan that we've talked a lot about. That's a core element that's new in this housing element that is going to be used to meet our allocations. Looking at the constraints to development, there are two sort of umbrellas that we have to look at these constraints under. One is governmental constraints, and you'll see that the state has actually asked us to include as a implementation plan, or sometimes referred to as a program in the housing element, that we evaluate our constraints. One of the things that they called out in particular, if you look on the last page of the housing element proper, which is on your packet, page 107, 106, number 24, they want us to evaluate our reach code as a governmental constraint. Now, this may become a moot issue depending on the council's direction as to how we adopt further reach codes, but I did want to draw your attention to that. I've been working with environmental services and other city departments to make sure that we approach this and balance the requirements of the state that we produce housing with our other objectives that we have for the city, including energy efficiency and carbon reductions. Other fairly major changes that I wanted to draw your attention to is that the state has recently adopted accessory dwelling unit law that allows for essentially 3 units on residential low-density sites. One of these units, according to the state, has to be what they refer to as a junior ADU. And I won't go into detail unless you're interested as to what that means, but essentially, as the name implies, they're smaller ADUs, and they have other requirements. But we are proposing to, in this housing element, to actually include, if you look on packet page 96, implementation measure number 13, sort of at the bottom of the page there, is to evaluate neighborhoods that would accommodate full third units. So 3 primary and 2 accessory dwelling units on the site. So I wanted to make sure that you're cognizant of this and make sure that this is a good policy direction to go. It's a way of infilling in existing neighborhoods without changing the feel of the neighborhood. You're basically adding 1 or 2 story housing stock. I see a question coming up.
So you're going to use the lot size?
We haven't identified yet what specifically the parameters will be. We've identified that there should be a program that evaluates this, and we'll bring it through Planning Commission and City Council for further review. But lot size is one of the things that we've been considering, maybe having some design standards that ensure that the buildings fit together well.
And percent of coverage.
Percent coverage could be one as well.
You said that thing about the junior unit? Mm-hmm. So why don't you just tell me about it?
Sure. So the state basically wrote into law that a property owner can come in for, by right, a primary unit, a secondary unit, and then what they're referring to as a junior ADU. Now, a junior ADU is required to be contained completely within the existing primary structure. There can be a certain percentage, I think it's something like 100 square feet added on to accommodate a secondary entry so that it has independent access from the primary ADU. And there are size limitations as well.
Okay.
And so it's...
That's good enough. I mean, I get the logic, and you've got a house from 1,500 to 2,000 square feet or 3,000, whatever. You have a second unit, and you can just take carve out a portion of that house.
Right. A garage or
yeah, a bedroom, bathroom,
Yep.
whatever. Great, thank you.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know where you were, so you have to find that.
Oh, yeah, it's fine. I can pick up anywhere. The and you can imagine with the junior ADU, depending on the types of units that you're trying to build these into, it may be very limiting, which is one of the reasons why we've been kicking around this idea of maybe allowing for some areas where you would allow 3 units by right, and it doesn't have to be a junior ADU. Other notable changes to this are in Housing Element Implementation Plan 20, which is on page, this is a long one because it includes some of the newer stuff. Starts on page 102. And this includes a number of different concepts around residential rezoning and upzoning, including the infill plan. And there's a lot of text in here that's required for certification that identifies, streamlining and, and other state requirements. And so this is really where we've embedded the specific area plan that we've been talking about and some of these potential upzone sites in and around the downtown and in the West End Road area. Housing Element Implementation Plan number 25. Which is the on packet page 107. And we've got a little bit of an elaborated detail on this that the state wanted us to point to. As we were going through our existing policies and our evaluating our existing codes with the state, they identified that several of the existing zoning codes and requirements for different types of housing, whether it's farm worker, or group housing or housing for the homeless, don't meet current state law. And so a lot of this was adopted back in 2008. A lot's changed since 2008 with state law. We'll be going through and over the first 3 years really evaluating a lot of our residential zoning district standards and requirements and making sure that they're compatible with state law. As you can imagine, where we have some types of housing that you might need use permits or other kind of discretionary review, what the state is telling us is that you can't require that kind of discretionary review. It has to be principally permitted. So I can go into a little bit of detail with you right now on that if you'd like, but otherwise you'll be seeing this again. We've promised within 3 years to come back and evaluate those codes. Those are some of the big changes. As I mentioned at the beginning, the bulk of this document is really similar to the last housing element. This draws us to a discussion around CEQA. If you look to the last page of the staff report proper, we talk about using both an addendum to our existing neg deck for the 5th cycle housing element, recognizing that there have been updates to the technical appendices, but for all intents and purposes, we have the same policies and programs on the one hand. And then on the other hand, we've got these new measures, which are really too speculative to do any kind of CEQA evaluation on. So we have upzone sites. We know that we have them. We can't possibly tell what the impact of those upzones will be at this point because we don't know any detail about what they might be, how high the densities will be, what will be required infrastructure to serve those. At this point, all we know is that we're not meeting our regional housing needs allocation, and so we need a program sometime in the next 3 years to upzone to meet that. We anticipate that we'll be able to meet those upzone requirements as we go through the remainder of the strategic infill redevelopment plan, updating the general plan, the housing element, the market study, and then the specific area plan and targeted zonings. So that's sort of what we've been discussing with the state as to how we get our certification for this housing element cycle. I think those are the big picture issues I wanted to make sure and walk you through. Again, I want to reiterate that this document is the same document you saw last time with the exception of the underlined strikeout that you see in this document. We have, Jen's handed out the additional minor changes that the state's requested that we'll be incorporating into this document as underlined strikeout for the Planning Commission to review next week. They'll be making a recommendation to you for the following week, and we'll bring it all back together for you for approval at that time. With that, any questions and/or comments from the public?
Yeah, I've got a question on packet page 296. There was a spot in here somewhere it talked about boat, RV, van, etc. And I'm looking at, I think it shows Arcata to have 0 boat, RV, van on table A8. I mean, we got RVs in Arcata Trailer Park, Trailer Court, and Town and Country and Mad River Rapids. Don't they come into this somehow? I mean, some of them never leave there.
That is true. The majority of the tables in the appendices were what we refer to as the HCD data package. So the Housing Community Development takes the information that they want you to analyze in your housing element, and they say, here's your data. So this is a good example of some data that maybe doesn't jibe with our understanding of our community.
Okay.
We had a discussion last time about the population growth estimates, and depending on which table you look at, there are differences. So I acknowledge that we clearly do have some RVs that people are living in, and not just RVs parked on the street, but RVs parked in
paying
RV
space
parks
for
and
them,
so on and so forth. And I can't tell you for certain whether those were included in the mobile home count. Our mobile home count looks low to me as well.
I mean, I just wanted to bring it up to you. You'll figure it out.
Yeah. We're not going to be able to change that number because we're not going out and doing original data collection on these.
Right.
We're using these as data that were generated typically through the area community survey with the census that is then manipulated by HCD to provide us the data that we're intended to evaluate.
Okay.
And so most of this, we're not sourcing the data from original sources.
Right, yeah.
We just
So
accept
it's just a
there's some
statistical
error.
thing. I just was curious about
That's a
that.
good point.
And then on page 78,
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing that the staff report spans from page 78 to 296, but I'm with you now on page 78.
yeah, I'm trying to get to it myself. Hang on just a sec.
Do you know how to use the little dots at the bottom of the screen?
The little dots don't move real well for me. For some reason, my little hand moves them in the wrong direction. We're real close here. So packet, page 78, where it says quantified. I wanted to understand what that meant. quantified objective summary, what does that mean, quantified? I mean,
Yeah,
in this context.
basically what the housing element starts with the allocation. And because it takes a while for, from the time that the beginning of the period starts and when the housing element is adopted.
Okay.
So the period starts actually on December 31st of 2018. And then we're going to be adopting it towards the end of 2019, right? And so the quantified objectives summary essentially takes the total that we were allocated. So if you look on the top line, running across those bolded numbers, the fair share allocation, those are the numbers in each income category. And then the quantified objectives reduces that number by the number of units that were built or substantially rehabilitated.
Yeah, I got it. So it's just a breakdown. It wasn't that. That's not
nothing
quantified. I'm like, so with what? You know,
Yeah,
I didn't.
quantified with building permits is what they're quantified by.
Okay, I think I'm good there. Thanks.
Just one comment. This is something I had already spoken to the city manager about, but I appreciate the changes and additions here, especially for HE 13 policy around infill development and parking. Just really appreciate the elaboration there of that connection between if we're going to have infill development, there's an impact on parking, and what are we going to do about the parking situation. Not that this totally solves that, but I feel like it has more detail here that I think will give some more policy direction. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the, I'm glad you brought that up because that was actually a significant change from last time I meant to bring up as well. Our last version actually said, if we do infill, we'll make sure and add extra parking so that we don't have offsite impacts. What that effectively means is that you're going to be limited by the amount of infill units that you can do based on the number of flat parking spaces you have on the ground. And so it's part of the discussion that we've been having over the past several months. This was actually brought to our attention by the Coalition for Responsible Transportation. He pointed out that it was in conflict with the rest of the document, and so we modified that.
Yeah, and I think it'll be good because I think so far, at least since I've been on the council, a lot of the conversations about parking are on a project-by-project basis. And so I think this will be good to have something in here that does our kind of our guiding principles around it.
Any other, go ahead.
You know, on table 2, page 67, you fix that typo, yeah? It's like driving me crazy when I look at it.
Wait, where are we at?
Page 67, you know, the N from allocation, Y, inventory.
You can thank Minute Track for that. It looks perfect in my version.
It does?
Yeah.
Okay. I looked at it and I thought, I'm not going to bother trying to figure out what that YN stuff means because I can't imagine what it means. So I got it now.
Yeah, this drives me crazy too. So thanks for pointing that out.
Well, thanks.
All right, do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on this agenda item? Please come on up.
Again, I'd just like, this is business as usual, and it's important to look at all these details and what the state regulations are and this and that. If we are heading into major sea level rise sooner as opposed to later, if we're heading into migration into Humboldt County sooner as opposed to later, I think we need to be prepared to look at this and look at building codes and all those things that are on this agenda in a emergency way. So I just want to again reiterate, this is great, and I'm glad everybody's looking at it in such detail, even including the parking issue. But I also just want people to recognize, something may happen, especially in terms of infill in lowland areas and the design of individual units for people, that I just really think it's important we we spread out broadly and kind of take a look at what is a possibility of what could happen and how will we adapt. So that's just all I wanted to say. And I'm sorry to sound like a broken record, but I am.
So, David, when we talk about that little junior unit, can a tiny house be that? I mean, where do we have tiny house in here anywhere exactly?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, a lot of the policies that are, you know, directed in this housing element are really directed at compact development that will, you know, support alternative modes of transportation, which is one of the highest greenhouse gas emitters, including the junior units, the tertiary units on properties, you know, or more audacious things like the specific area plan.
Okay. So if somebody comes up and they're building a house, second unit, and they want to put a tiny house in there, could we approve that as a junior unit? Or does it have to go through the whole second unit, accessory dwelling unit, space recommendation, you know, requirements?
Yeah, the building official is here luckily tonight. He might be able to address that. As long as it meets building code, if it's a tiny house, I mean, I think tiny house means so many different things to different people.
Yeah.
But there's no reason why you can't have a very small, modest unit as your accessory dwelling unit.
Okay. Yeah, I don't need to get into it.
You probably would have a hard time having one of the tiny houses that's like on an 8x12 trailer with a composting toilet, that sort of thing. But if you're plugged into services and, you know, have a house, regardless of how small it is, it meets building code, it's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other members of the public that would like to comment on this agenda item? Seeing none. So I believe with that, we will continue the public hearing to December 18th, 2019. And, you know, I've read through this several times now as you've been making changes and updating it. And, you know, I couldn't help but think of, recognize the immense amount of work you put into this. So I just want to say thank you very much to both of you and your department.
Yeah, it has been a huge volume of work at a very rapid pace, in particular in the last month. And Jen has been the primary project manager collating all this information. One thing I pointed out last time I didn't point to this time, but please read the section on our public engagement. It's probably one of the most robust public engagements we've done on a document, and it's going to leverage not just this, but it'll also help lift some of the specific area plan work that we're doing. So thank you for recognizing that.
Can I say one thing? I'm really looking forward to the public engagement plan, which is an implementation measure in this, and how that can assist with some of our public engagement going forward on the specific area plan and some of the other long-range planning documents that we're doing. So,
And one thing I'll just add, in reading the public engagement happened for this process, it was really great to just read even summaries from all the different meetings that you did and what were the different, you know, the different pieces of feedback that you got based on the different constituencies that you were engaging. So thank you.
And just as a reminder, we do need a vote to continue to the 18th.
So I will make a motion to continue the public hearing to December 18th, 2019.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And next we have new business item A, presentation by Chief Justin McDonald of the Arcata Fire District.
Oh, thank you.
Tough acts to follow. I'm not going to do cartwheels, and I'm impressed at a 200 and some odd page staff report. I get sweaty at about 3, so that's a lot. Oh, perfect. All right. It's warming up. So first off, I'd like to say thanks for having me come out. We kicked off Measure R, and so that's the big question is, what is Measure R? Before we get into that, just again, introduce myself, Justin McDonald, Fire Chief for Arcata Fire District, and I brought Nicole Johnson, who is one of my directors. So she is one of our 5 elected officials, and so she'll help me tonight with this. So we'll get into it. There we go. Measure R, it's a special tax proposed by the Fire District. We are going to have it on the March 2020 ballot. This is the interesting part. It's going to replace the 1997 special tax. This tax is kind of a flat rate tax. There's no inflation factor to it. To modify it, we have to replace it. And then finally, this is part of the ballot language, but it would generate for us $2.2 million. So what is the purpose of Measure R? We're going to try to keep it really simple. The fire district needs to be able to respond to emergencies. This tax will allow us to retain 2 firefighters on duty at our 3 fire stations and 1 battalion chief as a supervisor. It will restore 3 frozen, that are currently vacant, firefighter positions, and it will allow us to repair and replace as needed our fire engines and equipment. I just want to point out in recent events, really recent events with the Big Blue Cafe, are the reasons for 3 fire stations. Just as kind of a 2 people on duty is not even the kind of the industry standard across the bay. In Eureka, Humboldt Bay Fire runs with 3 people on a fire engine. The national standard, and you know, we're nowhere even close to that, is 4 people per fire engine. So we're going for 2. And why is that important? So I was just doing some quick calculations. 2012 was when we staffed the Arcata station. So we brought our staffing up. Prior to 2012, if you look at any major fire we had in Arcata, we did a valiant job of trying to put it out, but the long-term effect was it was essentially a parking lot for some time. And it's as recent as the Tea Garden apartment fire. That was 3 buildings that were taken out of service. There was nobody at Arcata. It was still a volunteer response. The engine was coming from the Mad River Hospital station. North Coast Environmental Center, another fire. I was first due. Took me 6 minutes to get there from the Mad River station. And by the time we got done, 3 buildings were on the ground, and there's still an empty lot over there. Prior to that, we had the fireworker building. Next door was the Ace Hardware building a few years prior to that. And then Barnes Drugs on the corner that sat vacant for how many years? I mean, that was a long time. So let's go to post-2012 when we have downtown station staffed. We have the Arcata Presbyterian Church. Not a big fire. It was on the outside of the building. We had the crews coming from the Arcata station. They were on scene less than 2 minutes. Tomos had the fire around the fish tank. We were able to get there on scene, get that fire under control. Granted, there was smoke damage through the building, but the Hotel Arcata is still on the corner. Robert Goodman Winery was just a couple, I think it was a week after that, same thing. We had help because his building was sprinkled, so it kept the fire in check. But again, we had those crews right there. And then the other one is every fire chief prior to me was their worst nightmare is the east side of the plaza. It's the only side of the plaza that hasn't had a major fire. And they're big buildings, they're common subfloor areas. And what did we get? A fire that was underneath that building. Our crews were in station. As the folks were pounding on the door to alert them of the fire, they were on scene within 2 minutes and had the fire in check. If any of these fires happened from the church to Big Blue and we were coming from the other station, you add 6 minutes. And in 6 minutes, the fires are they're gonna get way bigger. And as we've seen, history has proved that any fire on downtown Arcata is catastrophic. Hence the reason why the fire department came into existence in 1884. You burn the town down. People want to, preserve their property and their buildings, so they start a fire department. So that's the point of why 3 stations. It's all about response time. It's all about having those folks in the right place at the right time. If that's not enough justification, this is the other question we get is why? Why do you need more tax dollars? First and foremost, it's been 13 years since we've we've received an increase in tax. Being that we're a special district, we're not affiliated with the city. I'm sure city manager's happy. I'm not after city budget money. We're not affiliated with the county. We do get some property tax, a small portion, but that's a vast majority of our income comes from our special tax and benefit assessment. So again, it's been 13 years since we've received it. Currently, we have the tax that was passed in '97 and the benefit assessment that was passed in 2006. No real inflation factors. Fingers crossed that the community grows, empty lots get developed, or more units get put in. That's good for us because it generates more tax. But again, not a huge growth. We see about 2% growth coming out of that. The other thing is, this tax is needed to prevent staff layoffs, not just freeze the ones that are left vacant, but actually cut deep. And again, my board has directed me that for public safety, for employee safety, we're going to try to go down swinging and make sure that we keep everybody on 3 stations open until it's just not possible anymore, which brings to the final slide that this is the last year that we can maintain 3 stations with our current funding. This is an interesting one as our fire season has changed to more of a year-round fire season. I just got the word CAL FIRE is going to close down fire season here in mid-December. You know, not too many years ago, that was, you know, mid-December was nuts. And so we're seeing this fire season going year-round in California, and that has huge effects when you look at the city of Redding, Santa Rosa, that Paradise, we're burning down towns, not just trees, not just a few houses. Insurance companies are now starting to get worried, and what we're seeing, we've been questioned by folks that live in the fire district, is their insurance rates are going up. Worse yet, insurances are getting canceled because they live in a risk zone. I was just told that up around California is a high risk. For those that are looking on a map that don't know the area, that sure, there's trees up there. It's dangerous, but it's California, it's Arcata, it's Humboldt County. We're moist and it's green, but the insurance companies don't understand that. So where I'm looking at is now we're in this world of insurance. Anything that happens, you make a claim, you move, the fire department doesn't have enough stations, your insurance is going to get affected by it. Not just residential, commercial is going to be the same way. So the pitch is, by retaining our current level of staffing, we're not asking to go 4 people on an engine, keeping what we currently have will allow us to maintain our insurance rating. Right now, for insurance, we're rated as a 3, which is we just got into it the last time we got rated. It's pretty good. When I first started back in 1994, we were just into a 4. So those insurance classes may not seem like much years ago, but talking with the insurance folks, if we drop, that's grounds for the insurance companies to be looking at the policies. So if we can maintain our rating, hopefully we can keep people's fire insurance relatively stable. And by doing so, it'll allow us for being there for a rapid emergency response, whether it's fire or medical. So the other big question is, what will it cost? That's a busy slide. For all intents and purposes, the new proposed tax, it's going to, like I said, it's going to replace the other one. An empty lot, nothing on it, is $30. The biggest parcel that we have out there is a single-family residence. It would be $118. That's in addition to the benefit assessment that's already out there. So for a grand total of $206 for a single-family resident is what we would be looking at for this total combined cost. But the actual tax itself is $118 for a single-family residence. That sounds like us going somewhere else. A little close. So the other part of it is we kind of have a little bit of a misnomer. Firefighters, our mission has changed. Back in 1996, which is where I could get back to the computer, everything prior to 96 was handwritten out incident reports, and I'm not going to go back and count back then. But we were running 1,232 incidents. In 2006, just happened to be when we passed the last benefit assessment, we were at 1,750. Last year, we were at 3,357 calls. Ironic, Dave White, former fire chief, he's still a volunteer with us, called me up and was giving me a bad time because he said when he joined, they ran 270 calls in the year, 1974, and in 2019, we're averaging 318 calls a month. So we've really kind of blossomed that. But why is that? Well, we do more than fight fires. We respond to life-threatening medical emergencies, vehicle accidents, hazmat spills, alarm activations. When the power went out, the wind's blowing. That's a lion's share of what we were doing. The other things we're out there doing is public education. Safety inspections, we've been doing kicked off the business inspection program, and we've been doing the multifamily apartment complex inspections and any other public service needs. Since the police chief's not here tonight, I can poke fun at the cops. My sales pitch for the fire service is when you have a bad day, you're having an emergency, it's in the back, gosh darn it. Hey, chief. He's always around, I tell you. I was on a down power line and he comes driving up. Put a bell on him so we can hear him coming. All right, plug your ears. So, when you call 911, you're having a bad day, regardless of what it is, you need help. They ask 3 questions: fire, medical, emergency, right? Is there a bad guy? Is there somebody that you need to have the cops come out? If the answer is no, then it switches into, well, what else are you having? If it's a medical emergency, ambulance, fire show up. If it's not on fire, who goes? Who goes to help? That's us. I mean, we have some crazy calls. We've had pets that have had their head stuck in the wall. We'll go out, help them cut it out. The last call the other day that I had to shake my head at, a gentleman was fiddling with his plumbing and had a huge water leak. He panicked. He put his hand over the leak. It's spraying everywhere. And he called 911. Well, you're not going to get the sheriff's department. It was in McKinleyville. You're not going to get the sheriff's department. It's not a medical emergency, so they tone us out and off we go. Luckily, our guys were really good. They saved the day. They turned the water off, and he was very thankful. But that's what we're all about. You're paying for firefighters to be available for response. Unlike law enforcement, we don't go out and patrol and look for dangerous fires. They're just not happening. So we have to make sure that our firefighters are ready to do more than just that. They're there to help. And again, my philosophy is when you're having a bad day, that's our job to come out and help, whatever the case may be. No, we're not going to clean gutters, but we'll come out and help you. So that's where our mission has changed. About 5%, I got another slide, 5% of what we do is fire related. This one might be a little busy. Close. Red, I try to keep it red. I'm colorblind. I do great with primary colors, but red is fire. You can see it. There's not that much. Out of, I think we probably had about 100 fire incidents. This year alone, we've had 16 working structure fires. We've had vegetation fires and vehicle fires, but the main thing is structure fires. So a little over 1 a month. But you can see the blue line is EMS calls. Everything else up here is that what the law enforcement, what ambulance doesn't do. You're just having that bad day, a lift assist, all of those calls, that's where we come in. A little bit better breakdown right there. About half of what we are, rescue EMS. Again, 5% or roughly 5% is fires. Service calls, water removal, the guy with his hand over the leak, the fish tank blew up and we got to go help suck up the water. Unauthorized burning, things like that. Good intent. They thought they saw a call. It was the wrong location, no emergency, control burning, and then mistaken alarms. It just wasn't actually a call. So for us, what happens if Major R fails? The district's going to be forced to reduce on-duty personnel from 7 to 4. And it would have the following effects. So one of our 3 fire stations would close. Our 3 battalion chiefs, equate it to what you have here in law enforcement. You have a sergeant who's the shift supervisor. That's what our battalion chief does. Our battalion chief positions would be eliminated. It would be me as the only chief left, which is a little unnerving, which would also force down to the bottom. 6 firefighter positions would be eliminated. 6 employees would be laid off. The question that we're getting is, oh my God, what station's going to close? We don't know yet. The big question that the board would have to study is, do you do it on a rotation? If somebody's off that day, do you close that station? If do you do it based on the greatest loss or potential for loss? Downtown Arcata, there's a lot of historical big buildings, and as David and I were talking about, as they go up, that starts to make me nervous because those are big labor-intensive buildings if something goes on. Public safety's in there, employee safety, all of that. So it's not a really easy question. Oh yeah, we closed this one. It'll have to be thought out and studied. To put it in simple terms, we go from this, that's our on-duty staffing every day, which is not really much, to this. You got 4 people and me, maybe. That's okay for medical calls. That's not okay for structure fires. That's not okay for vegetation fires. I've fought a couple vegetation fires with this, and it's pretty unnerving. So as I shift in through Major R, we can come back to questions. I had one other kind of component of this. We carry the name Arcata. We're just unfortunately not affiliated with the city. So part of that is we cover this huge chunk of real estate within the county. So what are we? Arcata Fire District is a single-purpose special district independent of the County of Humboldt and the city, and it's governed by a board who's elected directly by the voters. We provide critical emergency life-saving fire protection services to the communities of McKinneyville, Manila, Bayside, Jacoby Creek, and the city of Arcata. We started in 1884. You burn the town down, people want to start a fire department. In about 1944, the fire district formed because the city wasn't really happy about giving services outside to the non-city residents. So the fire district formed up, and we kind of ran this tandem system. Same volunteers went to calls, you just took a different truck. The city truck, the district truck. About 1974, the city said, yeah, we're out of the fire business, and pretty much handed it over to the fire district. So from 1974 on, the fire district has handled all of the fire-related stuff. So if we continue down, who are we again? This is my staff. Aside from me, I have 1 business manager. We have 18 career firefighters. Those are the folks that are out there in the fire engines. We have 3 battalion chiefs, so we have 21 career staff. Our volunteer firefighters, it's pretty dismal at 4, but I'll tell you what, you try to recruit people to be active and deal with 3,350 calls. It's crazy. This is not unique to us. This is to our county. Most of the volunteer departments, there's roughly 38 fire departments in Humboldt County. Humboldt Bay and us are the paid, everybody else is volunteer. People are struggling to find volunteers. It's inherently dangerous, and life's busy. Who wants to get up at 2 in the morning and run calls like this? And then you have to go to work in the morning. So trying to find volunteers, we've branched out. We have some college fire academy graduates that are looking to get experience. So we have 2 firefighter interns, which I'm really hopeful because they're eager. They need the certification, they need my signature, and hopefully we can get some good work out of them in return. We do have a robust group of volunteers that are our logistics team. They are much like the community citizens on patrol. They don't want to do firefighting, but they want to give back to the community. So they'll come out and assist us. And in fact, one of our logistics guys babysat the big blue building for the night after the fire to make sure that there was no smoke, no fire. He was on fire watch. Every 20 minutes, he patrolled the entire building inside and out. So that's the logistics folks. And again, our daily staffing, 1 duty chief, 6 firefighters. We're covering 62 square miles, 37,000 residents. We were one of the largest fire districts. A couple of them have merged and beat us on that, but again, it's from Indianola all the way up to Clam Beach and out to Glendale. Just as a, there it goes. So that's Dave Haller, one of our volunteers. He's actually a school teacher out of Freshwater. This is your team. This is your firefighters. You'll see them around. You'll see them sometimes maybe not here. They're in Eureka. That's the nice thing about the fire service is we are assisting all of our neighboring agencies up to and including we had an engine in Sonoma for 2 weeks for the Kincaid fire. And Nicole is going to take over. She kind of kicked off a project with us, and I'll let her talk about that.
So I'm Nicole Johnson. I'm one of the directors for the board, and I represent McKinleyville, the southern part. So that's District 2. And one of the things that we've kind of gotten some public feedback on is our name. Arcata Fire is a little confusing, especially to the residents of McKinleyville. We have heard some feedback that they think there's a McKinleyville Fire Department, and there isn't. It's the Arcata Fire Department. So we've been having some community meetings, and we came up with a slogan that's called the 531. We are 5 communities, 3 stations, 1 district. And so one of my side jobs as a district member is that I help the district with their Facebook and their Instagram. So we reached out to one of the local businesses here in Arcata, Visual Concepts, to help us design a new logo that really drives home the point that we are more than just Arcata Fire, and to really kind of draw an eye to that we are Arcata, Bayside, McKinleyville, Manila, and Jacoby Creek. And just to kind of get that knowledge out there, because it was really shocking to the board and to the career firefighters that people just don't realize. For example, we had a fire in McKinleyville. It was a home fire, and our trucks showed up, and one of the residents came out, and as they were helping squirt their home to make sure it didn't catch fire, they said, well, when's the McKinleyville Fire Department going to show up? And the guys were like, well, there isn't one. It's us. So that's really why we did this thing. I don't know if we have slides still. Did it go to sleep? Yes. So this is the logo. We really think that they did an excellent job over at Visual Concepts, and we really were happy to keep it local, and to help support. They also helped us with our original rebranding when we got our new current logos that we have on all the patches and the trucks and things like that. Okay, and then this is our district map, which really kind of helps give you a visual idea of how large our district is and how important it is that we do have the 3 stations. And like Justin said, McKinleyville is a very large district in and of itself. We do have 2. We have our northern and southern representatives. Arcata also has 2, and then this part down here is still Arcata, but it reaches out into the Jacoby Creek and the Manila area. So we have 3 members of our district board down here, and then 2 at the top. So we are covering a lot of area and a lot of space, and so we really felt that the 531 will at least help us move forward away from the Arcata only. And then the other thing we wanted to talk about is how to get more information. We're really pushing everyone to visit our website. We have a questions asked link, which really has a lot of information for people to digest. Any campaign that we're doing on social media, we're really pushing people that way. All of our district board is, we're in the process of educating everyone to be able to answer all of those questions. Justin is an excellent source of information. So if you have any questions, we do ask that you reach him. And you can email any of our board members. So Renee Campbell, she's also our board president at the moment. She represents McKinleyville North. I'm the Division 2 person, which is McKinleyville South. Randy Mendoza, he's our North Arcata representative. Elena is our Central Arcata representative, and then David Rosen represents our Bayside Jacoby Creek Manila, which is kind of a mismatch of an area, but he's got a pretty big section. All of the board members, it's the first initial and their last name at arcatafire.org if you have any specific questions that are related to those districts. And that's the end of our presentation.
Do we have any comments or questions from the council? Go for it.
How large a portion of your increase in expenses has been coming from changes in PERS or increases in medical insurance?
That's the lion's share of our personnel cost. For us, our unfunded liability payment, the PERS says, hey, you haven't paid in enough. We're about $470,000. That's one of those things that there's no negotiation on it, and it keeps going up, which I'm sure is a fraction of the cost of what the city has. But that's a large chunk of change for us. And then, yeah, like you said, health insurance. We're through PERS. It fluctuates. This year it was flat, but a couple years ago it was up 6%. So it's, I wish I had the magic 8 ball to tell me where the insurance rates were going with that.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to say thanks and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on this? Seeing none. I'd like to propose that we bring this back for our December 18th meeting and consider endorsing this measure. Okay, cool.
One thing that I would like would be, I don't know if we have it yet, is more detailed information on what's going on as far as the fire district's budget and
sure,
and sort of trends in expenses and things like that.
I can get that.
So we just got a little look from our city attorney that we can actually make a motion to endorse it tonight. So I will move that we endorse Measure R.
I'll second that.
Great, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your service. All right, next we have new business, item B, introduce ordinance number 1522, amending the Arcata Municipal Code pertaining to the California Building Code and companion codes, Title 8, Building Regulations, Chapter 1, Building Codes, Articles 1 through 9, 11, 13, and 14. May we please have a staff report?
Yeah, I'll just introduce the item, and then your building official, Nelson Membreno, is here, and he can address it in more detail or answer any of your questions. We have an entire chapter of title. Well, we have an entire title of the municipal code that is devoted to the building regulations, and that is Title 8. And then Chapter 1 are the building codes themselves. Most of them are the uniform building codes. And periodically, the city does update them, so they're current with the state-adopted codes, and that is what's before you tonight. It's a relatively routine update of the various different codes, and I don't know if Nelson has anything he wants to add to that, or just simply see if you have any questions.
Well, actually, I don't want to, add anything. The only big difference that we're gonna see is that we're gonna propose to update the 97 Uniform Housing Code. That's a 22-year-old building code that we like to update it. And we're going to propose to implement the 2018 International Property Maintenance Code, and that's an ICC. That's the organization that generates that code, and it's just like the International Building Code that California uses. It's the same organizations that generate this code. That's the only big changes that we're proposing. And the other big item that we're gonna big change that we're gonna propose is that we're gonna propose the 2019 2019 California Energy Code, and it's going to make a big difference because it's going to change the Arcata's REACH code, the new one that we just implemented 6 months ago.
Right.
With the new California Energy Code, this energy code is going to be 50% better than the 2016 Energy Code, and it's going to be 20% better than the Arcata's REACH code. So that's the only big change that we're going to propose, but it's going to be better than that we have in place. So that's the only big difference that and I talked to the Arcata's REACH code committee, and they're planning to find some new energy requirements that we're going to implement. And so, the public, like Joanne, is concerned about it. So we're trying to find some energy requirements that's going to push our new projects, better than the 50% that the energy code has already in place. So we're going to keep working, and I think we're going to present to the City Council a new REACH code around June next year. So we're hoping that we have a new REACH code implemented pretty soon.
Well, the two biggest changes that I'm aware of in the 2019 Energy Code, one is that installation inspection will become effectively mandatory, not specific. It will be almost impossible to comply without doing installation inspection by a certified person who's called a HERS rater. And the second big change is it's going to require solar PV for pretty much all residential construction on 3 stories or below.
That's correct. I think that do have to push it.
And there's somewhat tighter energy requirements, but these other two look like the biggest ones by far. And I've taken the building that I used to sort of see what it would take to comply with with our existing REACH code, and then I looked at what it would take to comply with the 2019 code, and what my analysis, which could get the committee could get into more depth on, is that doing about 10% above the 2019 code is about the highest that would be feasible. And it would be feasible, and I did a model that showed some reasonable set of measures that would comply with the 10% better than the 2019 code.
Mm-hmm. Well, looking at the numbers that the energy code, comparing the 2016 and the 2019 energy code, only those prescripted designs, the 2019 adds only 7%, but in adding solar installations to the new buildings, that's going to make it 50% better. Because now the new buildings, they're going to generate their own energy. And that's why it makes it so efficient, because the requirement of having solar installation on it.
Yeah. And to a lesser extent, because of the installation inspections, they'll have to do a better job of installation, and the installation will be more effective for that reason.
Well, that's going to be we're going to have to get the raters to do the RQQ test before we conceal the walls. So they had to do it before we conceal it, because if we do the inspection, the test, after everything, all the finishes has applied to the house, if they don't pass the test, we're going to have a non-compliant house. So that's why we had to get it done before we conceal it. We conceal the walls.
Yep. Yeah, as you know, I'm certified as a HERS rater, and I do HERS verification, and it takes a very precise set of steps occurring at the right time to make the installation inspection even possible at all. And a lot of the builders are not used to having to do that.
Yes, it's going to be a lot of, tomorrow I'm going to have a training on the energy code right here at one of the offices by the the college. So at least, we're going to have a lot of people going to that energy training. So there's going to be new energy information, provided for the public tomorrow. So
Oh, and what time is that?
it's going to start at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow.
All right, and do you think it would be helpful for me to attend?
Of course, I want everybody to come to that training.
And I feel like the two of you should get coffee sometime, because I feel like, yeah.
I'm gonna get coffee for everybody and donuts. So,
And where is this happening?
by the I knew in the area, so it's one of the offices that we have near the campuses. I think on this street. On this street.
We'll confirm the location. Mark, are you confirming? David's confirming that.
So
It's at D Street at 8:30. If it's different than that, I'll make sure you get a phone call. Yeah, and just so, the council probably recalls, but when we implemented the REACH code, we actually knew that it would be a fairly short duration. It was sort of early implementation of the 2019 code. So you had discussion tonight about your housing element. Our answer to HCD right now is in essence that, our REACH code, for practical purposes, it didn't officially sunset, but the new code really does supplant it with a more stringent requirement. So at this point, we are just at that base level as we adopt our housing element. But we will continue to look for where there is cost effectiveness analysis completed if the council wants to continue to look at future REACH codes.
All right, do we have any other comments, questions from the council right now? Do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on this agenda item? We're almost to that point. We have another public comment section coming up pretty shortly. All right.
I'll make a motion to introduce ordinance number 1522, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata, amending the Arcata Municipal Code pertaining to the California Building Code and companion codes, Title 8, Building Regulations, Chapter 1, Building Codes, Article 1 through 9, 11, 13, and 14, waive reading of the text and consent to read by title only.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to new business. Item C, appoint 2 council members with ceremonial authority to select a recipient for the 2020 City of Arcata Business of the Year Award and to present the award at the Arcata Chamber of Commerce Annual Business Leadership Awards Dinner. So I think it's pretty self-explanatory, unless you want to say something now. All right. So we have any council members that are interested in being on the 2-person?
Sure, I haven't done
All right.
it in a while.
So we have Councilmember
Oh, wait, we
Pereira.
did it last year together. I thought we did that one.
You did last year.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
You can do it again.
I don't know why it felt so long ago.
I don't remember. Yeah.
So we should give it to our colleagues then if they're interested.
Yeah, I'll volunteer to be one of those people.
All right.
Do you want to be number 2?
We need a motion?
Well, we're still.
We're another
yeah.
2. I mean, I'm happy to be the number 2. I didn't know, since you didn't do it last year, if Councilmember Winkler, if you were interested in doing it with Councilmember Patino. Otherwise, I'm happy to do it.
I will do that then.
Okay. Then I will make a motion to appoint Councilmembers Patino and Winkler to select the recipient for the 2020 City of Arcata Business of the Year Award.
Second.
Do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on this agenda item? Seeing none. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And so I just want to clarify too that just the way it's written, I believe it's also, I don't think we changed this language, did we? But yeah, so it's just, it kind of implies that we should also pick who's going to present it. But I know we kind of have a tradition that the mayor presents it and then the vice mayor doesn't if he can. So I just want to clarify that everyone is okay with that. All right, we'll do that. And Next, we have oral and written communications. Now will be the time you can come on up. And this time is provided for people to address the council or submit written communications on matters not on the agenda. At the conclusion of all oral and written communications, the council may respond to statements. Any request that requires council action will be set by the council for a future agenda or referred to staff. Speakers addressing the council may be limited to 3 minutes with a maximum of 5, and a time limit on the overall length of oral communications may be imposed. Please come on up, and if you have something to comment that is not on tonight's agenda, now's the time. If it is on the agenda, we can all talk to you after the meeting, but it has to be something that is not on tonight's agenda. And I'm so sorry, but we can't. It has to be public comment at the microphone on something not on the agenda. Yeah, I will gladly talk with you about it after the meeting, but this section is specific to items not on the agenda. I'm very sorry.
My name's Joanne McGarry, and I just want to ask a question about a zero waste issue on single-use plastics in Arcata and the status of that, and recent information that's coming out, including in a movie called, I think, Deep Waters or Dark Waters, about PFASs, and that's something called the forever chemical that's found on the coatings inside coffee cups and to-go boxes. And the more I'm hearing about compostable and single-use items that we thought were more forgivable, they're sounding less so. And I'm just curious on the timeline of any action the council is intending to take about this single-use plastic and single-use bottles and container type matter that was being discussed a while ago.
Thank you. Do we have any other members of the public that would like to comment on items not on tonight's agenda?
So good evening, Alex Stillman. So you'd think we were teaming up or something, but what I wanted to mention is, you know, over the years I've watched what's gone on in Marin County because I have a daughter that lives there. And the last time I was there, I was saying to her, what is happening now? She said, well, I have to sort everything. And I can remember when her first child was born, which is 22 years ago, that at that time everything was sorted. When they came down the street, they manually sorted everything. And then it went to just put it all in the can, and it went to a dirty MRF or some kind of a MRF. And now they have to sort on site themselves. So they no longer can they use their garbage disposal to put their garbage down. You know, it has to go in the compost bin. They have the green waste bin. They have the one for cardboard and paper. They have the one for bottles, etc. And so it's like I'm just watching the evolution and what happened down there and our evolution of what happened up here, how we just throw it all in one container and we know somebody else takes care of it. But in Marin, if you don't have your container correct, they will give you an opportunity to either fix it, and if you don't want to, they will charge you $25 to do it for you. So I'm wondering when we might come back to doing a better job in our whole recycling, composting, and I know the treatment plant would really prefer if we weren't using our garbage disposals the way we do and had some kind of a compost system. So I'm just bringing that forward, and I'm thinking about it for HWMA, and I know that Recology works really hard trying to come up with clean cardboard, and Linda Weiss told me not long ago she finally got her first load. So it's something, I know, Sophia, you're on that committee. It's something to start moving back towards because we see the larger entities are doing it, and we were, and we weren't, they were, and they weren't, and now they are. So thank you.
Any other members of the public that would like to comment on items not on tonight's agenda? All right, seeing none. You know, I know the single-use issue is something that, you know, all the council members care about and are interested in working on. And at the beginning of the year, you know, we did agendize it and started those discussions. And our staff has been very active and working very hard on it. And it's not simple. There's a lot of people impacted by it. My understanding is we're hopeful at the next council meeting, December 18th, that it will be ready for the council to review. And if you have anything else to add, please feel free.
Which is that it's still under review, so that's the hoped for date, but don't bank on it. I mean, we're hoping to get it. Just want to manage expectations.
So is it staff? Is it?
It's me.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and staff. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's in review between city staff and the attorney, so there are meetings scheduled, and we are working to finalize it. Hopefully, we did do a pretty substantial amount of public engagement, and hopefully you were able to get input in at that point as well. So we did make a lot of changes to the initial document based on that public feedback, and that's what's now being vetted through the attorney's office.
Thank you. And with that, we will move on to council and staff reports. Do we have a staff report this evening?
Yeah, just two quick updates. The first is this Saturday from 9 to 1. We do have a cleanup along Janes Creek. People that are interested in assisting with that should show up on M Street at the Bug Press Building at 9 o'clock. And then December 14th and 15th will be our holiday craft market at the community center, Saturday from 10 to 5 and Sunday from 10 to 4. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Do we have any council members?
Yeah, I've got an item that's it's something that I've been considering for some time. You know that I'm on the HTA board, and HTA runs all the buses in Humboldt County with the exception of AMRTS, our city bus system. And in conversation with Mike Wilson, who's also on the board, and our 3rd district supervisor, we have spoken with the director of HTA and just had conversations about how could it be that HTA, as they have done with the Eureka Transit system, has basically taken over the Eureka Transit system, so the city of Eureka has no staff or any involvement with running the Eureka Transit system. And it's evolved over the years to the point where that's where it is now. And especially Mike's idea of us integrating and doing that same kind of thing with AMRTS. So it's a hard discussion to have unless you have everybody in the room who is party to it. And so I would like to get the council's support to have city manager accumulate the data for AMRTS, and for us to sit down and have a discussion about this with the director of HTA, their finance staff, city manager, and whoever else besides NATRA or Adobe that was needed to sit down and say, okay, what are we doing now? How would this benefit the city? Or how would it be a disadvantage? What's the cost difference, if there is one? What's the advantage as far as HTA being the total umbrella for all the bus systems? And it started out with Mike and myself looking at it and just saying, it just seems logical that HTA would do all this because they have a giant office staff to handle it. Right now, HTA does all of our maintenance and driver training and maybe some computer information. And so the change, when I look at it, what would that change be? So instead of me and Mike and whoever just thinking about this stuff out in the air, I think it's time that we have a meeting that would involve City of Arcata representing AMRTS and HTA staff, and look at the data. How much does it cost to run? What are our stats? How much does the city of Arcata pay RTS? How much does HTA provide for AMRTS? I mean, because it's all so mixed. And once we have clarity in a discussion, then we could come back to the council and say, here's what we found, and what do we want to do about it? So I'm just looking for council support to direct the city manager to come up with the stuff the data we would need for that meeting.
What I'm thinking is this might be a good thing to put on the council goals discussion, because I'm afraid that city staff is very loaded right now, and I think since there isn't an immediate rush to do this, that it might fit better to just make it part of the council goal discussion.
And this is a council goal for the next year?
Yeah.
So we wouldn't talk about it till next year?
Well, which is coming up, council goals for what, April or something like that?
I mean, we will do our goal-setting sessions hopefully in February, but we do set goals for the following fiscal year that would start
Yeah,
July
so it's
1st.
not very long from now in which we're going to have goal setting, so I was just thinking of it might fit in better with it as part of that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I just say, are the goals to have a meeting? It's like, well, why don't you have the meeting and then you got the data for the goal?
Well, the goal is to investigate the possibility of rolling AMRTS into HTA is a potential goal, and we could discuss that goal, and staff could help come up with some data to help with that as part of goal setting, is what I was thinking.
Yeah, it just seems like it's not. Getting the information and having that around, and then the goal of either joining up with HTA or not.
I'm just concerned about extra load for a very heavily loaded staff right now.
Okay, I understand that.
Yeah, I'm of two minds about it, because I agree with Councilmember Winkler about staff time, but I do think if it's not a heavy lift to get some sort of meeting together before we do goal setting, that would be great, like if it was possible. I mean, so I would feel comfortable giving direction, if feasible, to do that prior to our goal setting so that we'd have a more informed discussion about, is that even a direction we want to go in?
Right, I feel like they're not going to create data, they're going to collect it.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Yeah. So if it's not a huge burden for it to happen, before we're doing our goal setting or before we solidify our goals, which is, we start the goal setting process in February. Mm-hmm. I imagine that could potentially be a tight timeline. But if it's before we codify our, goals, because I think it's later in the spring that we actually vote on our goals. It's because it's kind of more tied in with our budget at that point. So if we're thinking about it as, if you could do it, before we codify our goals for the year, because then that's something when we vote on it as a council, when it comes to an official meeting, then we could make changes to that goal based on the information that we have.
Right.
So when you say the city of Arcata meet with them, what are you envisioning? How many staff people?
I'm thinking of Karen Natra, Dobie probably, but and then HTA's director and finance person, myself and Mike Wilson.
Okay. What I would be comfortable with is just, again, trying to acknowledge the, staff time is, if, for this preliminary meeting, if, maybe a staff person.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy to go with you if you wanted to. You have two council members there, whatever you want. But I would feel more comfortable with that, and just to get the discussion going. And if it seems feasible, then we send everybody for a bigger meeting.
Okay, I guess I'm lost.
That's okay. I'm agreeing. I'm just saying, I think for, what you're describing, I guess, we're just kind of feeling it out and getting data. I don't know if we need all of them.
Yeah, I think that Karen is our director, administrator person, and the actual person running it would either be Nature Adobe, in the same vein, the HTA's director and their finance person, so that you have like they compare these counterparts in each group, and then Mike Wilson and myself are on the HTA board, so I think that we can handle it with that, and in a preliminary discussion, and at that point, come back to the council and say, we had a discussion, and these are some of the things, and what do we want to do? Do we want to set a goal to create, to put AMRTS under HTA, or do you want a goal to do something different?
I'd be happy to support you. I'm sensing it would be a 2-2. We could wait for Susan.
It's not on the agenda for motion, and so really you're looking for twinkles.
Yeah.
Paul has an idea and he's looking for twinkles, to use the
I'm looking for
jargon
council
the
support
council
so
uses. Yeah.
the manager knows.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as long as it's done in a way that it minimizes staff time for an initial meeting and doesn't significantly increase workload for staff, then I can go along with that.
What do you think, city manager?
Yeah, I think there's some initial data gathering that could probably be a fairly light lift. I think really looking at full integration is a long process, at least if you want to do some full public engagement. We have, a huge partner in HSU that I think should be brought into that discussion. So I think that is that should be a robust public process. It would take time to get some initial data, and I'm certainly happy to meet, with HTA staff. I can't speak to what it would take for them to be able to provide some budget analysis to the council in terms of their cost for it, but we certainly can provide, what it costs for us to operate the system. I mean, that's in your budget. So, I guess maybe to use the phrase manage expectations, we certainly could provide something, by that goal-setting period. And I'd happy to meet with that. I mean, I would suggest that, if we're going to do anything, that we would limit it to maybe 2 council members, and that we would just have, some more casual dialogue with HTA staff. So 1 or 2 of you only at this point. But then I do think if that's a larger discussion, then that's something that maybe the 2 boards would want to meet on in its entirety if it moves forward.
Right, and certainly all the partners, HSU, whoever, would want to be on a larger meeting, possibly.
Yeah.
Sometime off in the future. I'm just looking at this as, okay, how do you make this kind of change? It somehow has to start, or the discussion never occurs. So I'm just trying to start the discussion, and then we can look at it and say, okay, what do we really need to figure this out? Right. And then come back at a later date with more partners and more data.
Yeah, because I think the one thing, as this has come up in discussions in the past, that we lose is potentially some of that local control. So really understanding what we want built into a process, without going into too much discussion tonight.
Exactly.
I'm happy to do the light lift before goals.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Good. That's
Okay.
all I got.
Councilmember Winkler?
I went to one of the Humboldt County Planning Commission meetings on the Terrigen project, which, as you all know, was denied by the Planning Commission, and and Terrigen is now appealing that to the Board of Supervisors. And I think this tentative dates haven't, I don't know if they've been firmly set, but sometime later this month.
Thank you. Anything?
Let's see. I guess almost a couple of weeks ago, hosted a few folks from out of the area that are affiliated with the statewide Council of Homeless Advisors that I serve on. So had a folks a few folks come up to be able to just get a sense of, what's the landscape for rural homelessness? How does it vary from more urbanized or suburban communities? And so also did have another rural representative, Riverside County Supervisor Perez, also come up, and it was a really valuable exchange of experiences of what the rural experience is like. And we toured the Betty Chin Blue Angel Village, which was really great to see how they use that as transitional housing, and talked about workforce development. We talked about infrastructure and manufactured housing. And so anyways, it was a really valuable discussion.
Great. I helped with the project that the Arcata Sunrise Rotary Club's doing right now, where they are building raised bed planters for the Samoa Peninsula School. And we were able to complete 3 of the planters, and then hopefully this weekend we'll complete the other 3. And we'll say that the club has spared no expense. They're incredibly robust and like all the best building materials, so they should last a long time, hopefully. And then I also went to the Septentrino tasting room ribbon cutting a couple weekends ago, and it was well attended. And I went to a play for my little brother with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I'll say I'd gone to a play before, and it was really it was brutal. It was like 3 hours long. They had all these little kids trying to memorize all these lines, and it was pretty brutal. So I was expecting, I didn't know what to expect. And when I got there, this play was amazing. It was this partnership with Union Street Charter School and the San Francisco Opera Guild. And they basically come in, and it was only an hour long, and just worked with the kids. And they basically had these professional opera singers as part of the act. And it was just really enjoyable. So I just wanted to mention that. And then earlier today, I met with, her first name is Paolo, and she's a representative with Associated Students from Humboldt State, and she had some things she was hoping that our council would write a letter of support for to the governor's office, just regarding tuition increases for students and financial aid, and just different things that impact students that are on the lower income side of things. So I just let her know, send us a draft of what you like, and we can bring it to the council for consideration. And then I'll just mention that there is a Arcata Chamber of Commerce mixer tomorrow, 5:30 p.m. at Arcata Pro Floor. And that is it for me. Dates of future meetings. We do have a special meeting on December 12th, 12 p.m., where we will be selecting a mayor and vice mayor for the year 2020, and also picking or, deciding which council assignments we will all be taking on for the next year. And we also have item A, consider scheduling a special meeting in lieu of the January 1st, 2020 canceled regular meeting.
The city's municipal code actually automatically cancels regular meetings that fall on the 4 major holidays, so that will happen by code. At this point, we are trying to pull forward items to December 18th, and I don't have an indication from staff that it is necessary to schedule a special meeting, but if the council wishes to, you certainly could. If not, your first meeting in January then would be on the 15th, which is right in the middle of the month. So.
All right, so unless there's anything else, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.